people are coming in. That's great. Welcome, everybody. I can see lots of people joining. We're just going to give it a minute or two to allow people to get settled before we make a start. Numbers are creeping up. Oh, we're joined by a cat as well. It's Sid, is it?
It is Sid. Sid, please.
There we are. Numbers are still going up.
Impressive turnout.
Yeah. On a chilly February day.
It is chilly as well, isn't it?
Yeah, sunny and bright, but chilly.
Proper ice this morning.
It's going to get colder as well, I think.
Not good for your Parkinson's, the cold.
Isn't it?
Our symptoms are definitely exacerbated when it's sub-zero.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, well, it's 1902, I should say. So I'm going to start introducing, and then we'll get on to, I'm sure people will still be joining, and we'll get on to questions and things in a moment. So welcome, everybody. My name is Linny. I work for Parkinson's UK as a newly diagnosed team. We will be recording this. We are recording this today, and everybody will be sent a copy of that recording. We're going to try and catch up on some questions and things, but anything that we don't cover, we can send some information out afterwards with a bit of signposting to help you find more information if we're not able to cover all your questions off. I just want to remind everyone that we can't give personal advice. That would be inappropriate, and it would be between you and your health professional to decide what's best for you. But we will be reflecting people's opinions, experiences, and things like that as we go through the webinar. Everyone who's here tonight has asked me to say that they are expressing personal opinions, not representing any particular organisation or agency or anything like that, but they're here to share expertise and reflections on their experiences of health issues, long-term health issues and Parkinson's. So I will start. It is 1903. I keep saying 17. I'll start by asking the panel just to introduce themselves, just name and something brief about yourself. And is it okay if I start with you, Gary?
Yeah, by all means. And thank you for joining us this evening. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Gary Shaughnessy. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's 10 years ago this month, actually. So it's my anniversary. I'm not sure whether I should be recognising it, celebrating it, or commiserating it, but probably all three in some regards. I'm now chair of trustees at Parkinson's UK as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gary. And Andy, can I come to you?
Yeah, Andy Hobbs. I was diagnosed in 2014. I can trace my symptoms back. There's photographs of me from the year 2000 where I'm clearly presenting Parkinson's symptoms. I've had the disease at least 24 years. I work as a volunteer for Parkinson's UK, as a volunteer for Cure Parkinson's. I'm a trustee for Spotlight. And to stress again, any opinions I express tonight, they're my opinions from my lived experience. Not representing any opinions from anybody else.
Perfect, thank you. And Emma, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi everyone. I'm Emma Amascotto, and I run a mental health app for people managing chronic physical health conditions. So we support the person with the condition, but also the family members and the people around that who has a huge impact on as well. So it grew out of my own personal experiences, and really our aim is to help people live well alongside a difficult diagnosis.
Brilliant, thanks. And last but definitely not least, Suzanne.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So my name's Suzanne. I'm a Parkinson's physiotherapist, and I prescribe as well for Parkinson's. I've been a neurological physiotherapist for 30 years and been working just solely in Parkinson's probably for the last 5-6 years, but I've got a wealth of experience to share.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much. So we had some questions sent in to us ahead via Eventbrite. So I thought we'd just get stuck right in. So some real chunky questions from people. So thank you very much for sending those in. And the first one we're going to start with is somebody had asked about getting tips from others about how to combat depression, anxiety, and stress caused by Parkinson's. So we have got other questions as well, so we'll try not to spend the whole hour, but we kind of feel as if we could spend a whole week talking about this really. But we'll make a start anyway. So tips from others, and I will come to you first, Gary.
Thanks. Well, I mean, it is a huge subject, as you say, and I mean, I can only really comment on it in the sense of what it's meant for me. And when I was diagnosed, I was actually the CEO of Zurich in the UK at the time, and I was used to being in control of so much of my life in many ways. And suddenly I found myself out of control in the sense that I couldn't, when I was diagnosed, I was told this is a uncurable condition. You're going to go downhill, you'll decline. We'll give you medication to mask the symptoms, but that's pretty much it. And that was a really challenging situation for me to be in. And I'm not sure I was depressed. I don't think I know whether I was depressed, but I was certainly massively affected by it, and I really struggled with it. And what I think the first thing for me that was key was to stop beating myself up, actually, because it's amazing how you convince yourself that you're doing something wrong. You must have, have a bad diet, or there's something that's caused this, that's you put yourself in the situation. And if you can't snap out of it, that's your fault. So that was the first thing I would say, is I had to learn to stop beating myself up about feeling really bad about it. The second thing actually was I had to get a focus, and my wife was brilliant, and she basically told me, I should focus on the things I could do, not the things I couldn't do. And that was, massively key for me. In terms of giving me a something that I could say, right, I'm going to prove others wrong, prove the system wrong. That was what worked for me. And I got into exercise in a big way, but I've seen other people have done it by, focusing on art or creative activities in some way. And I think you do have to try and create a positive mindset, and a mindset that says I'll control what I can control, and I won't blame myself for the things that I can't control about the condition. So that's been crucial from my point of view. And I've been fortunate that I've had lots of great people around me who have reinforced the positives rather than the negatives, but it is difficult.
Yeah. I'm guessing other people will probably really identify with some of that as well. If I could come to you, Andy, and building on what Gary said, especially that sort of support network, does any of that sort of ring bells for you?
Yeah, everything Gary said rings very true with me. I think I'm on record somewhere as saying that the immediate post-diagnosis support for patients, I think I used the term woefully inadequate. You've been given this diagnosis by someone potentially in a matter of minutes. You haven't got a clue what it means, because very few people are that knowledgeable about Parkinson's. You go away and consult Dr. Google, and all of a sudden you think, oh my God, is that me? I've got weeks to live. So there's a few things I pick up on. First of all, don't ever let anyone tell you it's incurable. It's currently incurable. Mm-hmm. So don't ever take away hope from someone. The cure is out there, and the scientists will find it. Then I would say there are an enormous number of things that you can do to make this journey more or less pleasant for yourself. Probably one of the most important things you can do is to build a stress management toolkit. So whatever works for you is something you should, keep a note of. It might be mindfulness, it might be meditation, it might be hypnosis, it might be sport, it might be all sorts of things. So build up this toolkit, because stress is absolutely pure poison for Parkinson's. If you're stressed, you will notice your symptoms are on the full setting, and everything is just so much more difficult. So I put myself through counsellor training. So I'm a talking therapist. I found that invaluable. I wouldn't recommend that everyone did it. I mean, it's a hell of a commitment to put yourself through just to manage some anxiety or depression. But the things that you do learn from that are the importance of not being isolated. Don't self-isolate when you've got Parkinson's. So I would say to everyone out there, find yourself an age-appropriate support group. And by age appropriate, that doesn't mean necessarily the same number when you put your age down on paper. It's the same mental age, the same challenges that you're going through, somebody else is going through. And it's incredibly valuable to have someone to lean on that's either going through the same thing or been through the same thing. So if we come down to sport, I love sport. I'll play any sport anyone wants to pass in my direction. Sorry about the cat, everybody. Just move, pussycat. I play golf, I play football. I'm very fortunate to currently be the England Parkinson's walking football goalkeeper, which I know you wouldn't believe seeing me if I was in an off state. You might as well use a cardboard cutout. But if you take football as an example, if you join your local walking football club, hopefully they've got a Parkinson specific session. Immediately you've got a support network of however many people are at that club. They're likely to be like-minded because you've turned up to play football and so have they. You will be categorically amazed at how your symptoms change the minute you walk onto the football pitch. I'll send you some links that you can share which show people being pushed up to the side of the football pitch in a wheelchair, get out of their wheelchair and play walking football. It's absolutely staggering the difference it makes when you put a ball at your feet. For some people, that can be a cricket bat, a baseball bat, a golf club. Don't deny yourself access to sport, because not only will you benefit from the exercise element, but the social element. It cannot be overstated how valuable that is.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think some people are really anxious about talking to other people, but actually there's real value in talking to peers.
Yeah, particularly if you can find a Parkinson specific club, because I mean, I know I deserted golf. I gave up golf. I retired my golf clubs when I was diagnosed because I just couldn't cope mentally with the decline in my physical capabilities. But when you play with other people with Parkinson's, you don't have to explain on the first day, oh, I might get a bit shaky on the way around, or on a couple of holes, I might go into an off state and I can't hold the golf club. If you're with a group of Parkinson's, you don't even need to tell them that. You just get on and enjoy your game of golf. Same
Yeah,
with
because
football,
they get
same
it,
with
don't
cricket,
they?
same with rugby, because
Yeah.
they get it. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Suzanne, I wonder if I could bring you in, just with your sort of expertise around that social network and maybe a little bit into the physical activity as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with what Gary and Andy have said, really. So having listened to people in clinics, I realized that there was just a need for people to get together. And so I created a newly diagnosed group and very much involved the supporters of the people with Parkinson's as well as the people with Parkinson's, because I think they equally need a place to talk and get that support and really because I think if you've got a partner, they need to be informed as well as you need to be informed, and it definitely is something that you enter in together to support each other. I think it doesn't just affect yourself, it affects the person, the whole family really. So and the changes I've seen in within my groups. I normally have conversations with people in clinic, inviting them to this group, and they'll all say, I don't do groups. I don't want to talk to anyone else with Parkinson's. I don't want to see anyone else who's as bad as me or worse than me or better than me. They'll come out with 101 excuses, and lots of people say, I'll give you a week. I'll come once. And I'm like, just give me a week. And they do. And they all come back again, week after week after week. And from what we're doing is then I introduce them to lots of different types of sports. So locally, we've set up boxing and Pilates and access to a gym. And unfortunately, we don't have walking football locally where I work, but it's just introducing them to lots of different sports and just saying, and from that, all the groups are really busy because they turn up every week because they're seeing their friends. They don't have to explain things. They've got an instant support network. So yeah, I think talking to others, meeting others, even if you don't feel social, is probably the best thing to do when you first get diagnosed. It's a really good place to be, especially going forwards. It's a long-term condition. So you're going to need that support. You need a group of friends from the beginning who've journeyed with you to really understand what you're going through. And I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
great. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And Emma, I wanted to bring you in a bit here as well to also sort of talk about that family impact and the network around people. And somebody had sent in a question also about a particular situation of kind of PTSD and depression that might be compounding that. And I just wondered if you had any sort of take on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, lots of brilliant points there from everyone, the sense of community, finding your people, exercise, all those things. I think just on a general level, I think, the first step is just really normalizing and validating these experiences. I think it's so easy to sit there either as the person with the condition or as the family member and think, oh, why am I not coping? I'm obviously doing it wrong, and no, we don't even need to pathologize it necessarily. It's a really difficult thing to deal with, and lots of people are feeling the same. And I think, also to just understand the way our brains work. There's so much overwhelm. We're trying to take in so much information now. We've got fears for the future. We've got all these things going on. We're dealing with uncertainty. We're dealing with that lack of control that Gary mentioned. And our brains, they want to seek answers. It's how we try to keep this, how they try to keep us safe. We're constantly trying to find the fix. We're trying to find the answers. And that can just lead to so much overthinking and so much worry and so many what ifs. So just to realize that, it's a normal and natural reaction to things, I think, for starters. And like people have said, what are those things that can help you? What are those things? I used to work for Mind, and one thing we'd often get people to do is fill in a wellbeing plan. So just as someone mentioned before, but often just that thing of writing things down, of really thinking what helps me, because some people it's exercise, some people it's not, some people it's mindfulness, some people go, oh, don't want to do that. So it's seeking out those different ways, both immediate things. What can I do? How can I help regulate my emotions in the moment when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm having those rising feelings? And what can I do kind of for my long-term wellness? But yeah, more specifically, the question you mentioned about would a previous PTSD or depression diagnosis compound symptoms and how can that be prevented? The short answer to that is yes. If you have experienced depressive episodes before, you've experienced PTSD, then you are going to be more susceptible to experience those again. And that's there whether we're talking about Parkinson's or not. If you've had those before, you're more likely to experience them again. In terms of PTSD, I would say it's very difficult to know without talking to the person what support you've had in the past to deal with that, because the thing with PTSD, and I've experienced it before, is it can often lie dormant for a while. You can feel like, oh yeah, I'm fine now, and then years later something triggers it. So if you have experienced PTSD and you haven't had any professional support for that, I would explore that a bit further. EMDR I've had before, which is a really good one to look at. In terms of the depression, what I would say is, what happened last time? What helped you before? So if you've experienced, or your partner's experienced depression before, you'll already have had some experience of that, both in terms of looking out for what are those symptoms? What are those changes that you might notice? Because the earlier you can step in and support yourself or support someone else, the better. So we often just see changes in behaviour. Something's not quite right. Something's not the same as it was. Someone's acting differently. What are those things you might notice? And what are those triggers? There's often things that, it might be you've got a medical appointment coming up. It might be you've got a family event coming up. Whatever it might be, there's those things that we know can make us feel worse. Being prepared for those, knowing ahead of time, right, I know this is going to be difficult. What can I do to support myself? What helped last time? What worked? And just as I was saying before, trying to explore what are those different areas that can help you. There's loads of different things we can do to help. But the more we're open to those and more we explore them, we'll find those things that stick. We'll find those things that work for us.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. It's a huge subject and a complicated one, and we'll probably come back to it a little bit. Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, Lynnie, I was just going to say, I think one of the things that's always been really important for me is to try and choose a positive reason for doing something rather than a negative reason. So, for example, Andy talked about, going to and joining, a walking football club, etc. I think that's brilliant. I think there's a difference though if you do it because you feel I don't want to be out in the rest of the community with people who don't have Parkinson's, or you can say, actually, I really enjoy, socializing with people who have something in common with me, and I can learn and understand about it. Do you see what I mean? I think you've got to choose, in my view, also, and it's worked for me, you've got to choose a positive reason to do something rather than become a victim. And I think that's, I when I run, I don't feel like I've got Parkinson's. So I wish I could run 24 hours a day because I wouldn't feel like I had Parkinson's ever, but I can't. So, but make it something that you want to do on your terms, I think is really important.
I think that's a really interesting perspective of not feeling as if you're doing something because you've got no choice, but actually choosing positively to engage with something that inspires you. And I guess that reminded me of the way that you were talking, Andy, and not giving up things that you love.
Yeah. And something else came up in the conversation there. I think it was Emma mentioned it about your partners and it being a joint journey. But as a part qualified counsellor, I've run sessions for partners whereby they can ask any question they want to ask that for whatever reason they haven't felt comfortable asking their partner. Because sadly, relationship breakup statistics say that a Parkinson's diagnosis for one of you is going to put an awful lot of pressure on your relationship, because as the patient, you've got a whole host of thoughts going through your head, and as a carer or partner, you've got a whole host of questions going through your head. And I think often the partners are sadly forgotten. They don't necessarily have a forum to express their frustrations, and they don't feel it's right to express their frustrations at their partner because, well, they've got Parkinson's. You can't give them a hard time about it. So don't underestimate the power of support groups for your partners, because and I'm happy to come in. I'm based in the Midlands, but within an hour's travel, I'm happy to come and host those sessions for partners where they can ask absolutely anything, and I guarantee they will get a no holds barred, 100% honest answer. There's no taboos.
Get ready.
I've got no limits, no boundaries. You ask whatever you want to ask, and I'll come up with the answer.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, really important. I think those networks and partners, loved ones, supporters, definitely. I've no doubt we'll probably touch on other things coming back to that topic, but just for now, somebody had sent in a question about self-monitoring and how best to self-monitor. And I wondered if, Gary, if you had any particular ways that you monitor kind of like symptoms and how you're feeling and things like that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, there are some good apps actually around that you can use. There's if you go into the tech guide on the Parkinson's UK's website, there are a couple of apps that are free that you can monitor your symptoms. My personal experience on this is, I think it's really important that you don't become obsessed with your symptoms, because that actually, I mean, certainly for me, that makes them worse. So I try not to think about them, and at the end of the day, I'll then put in what have I, what time did I take the medication, etc., rather than be constantly convincing myself that I'm half an hour late for my meds, etc. I think the other thing that's interesting for me is, I think there are some things that are quite difficult to self-monitor. I mean, Janet will say, my wife will say to me, actually, you seemed a lot calmer today. And I'll think, gosh, actually, I was the opposite, and vice versa. So I think you can monitor your symptoms, but don't become obsessed, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. Andy, any take from you on that?
Absolutely. I mean, if you take the Universal Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale, I think that gives you a 1 to 5 measure. So in terms of a personal scorecard, I think that has absolutely zero use for a patient. There are many scorecards out there. My own personal favorite is one from a researcher out in Washington, Seattle. And she's devised a scoring system where you go and put in all sorts of details about your symptoms. Honestly, it takes a good 15-20 minutes to go through all the questions, and that then comes up with a numeric representation of all these symptoms that you've put in and the severity of them, and every single aspect is scored from 1 to 100. So you just move this slider along to say that you've got absolutely none of this symptom at all, or absolutely this is debilitating, and you've got that for honestly every single thing you could imagine, and it comes up with a score, and you can fill that in absolutely anytime you want, and it'll give you this score. So you can plot that over time and see if your quality of life is degenerating or improving even. And this researcher is on record as saying that it's now easier to improve the quality of life of someone with Parkinson's than it is to convince the scientific community that it's possible.
Really? Yeah.
And actually, she's 100% correct, because my quality of life scores since 2017, so in the last 7 or 8 years, have improved. And you can see spikes along the way where they've got worse, my symptoms have got worse. And I can actually identify the stressful events that correlate to those little peaks when my quality.
And is that encouraging to you then, to say you can does it help you feel a little bit more in control, that you're doing positive things to improve your well-being?
Absolutely, because one thing Gary said that I 100% believe is that you've got to have that positive outlook, and losing control on the diagnosis is something I, like Gary, found incredibly difficult. And to feel that I've got an element of that back, because this researcher puts all this data through a sausage mill and comes out with statements like, people who are doing this, their disease is progressing more quickly than people who don't do this. And people who are doing this, their disease is progressing more slowly than people who don't do this. So she's not trying to tell you why necessarily, but she's willing to go on record and tell you what. So if you do this, statistically, my data set tells you your Parkinson's will progress more quickly. If you do this, my statistics are telling me your Parkinson's will progress more slowly. And I'm happy to send you the link. I won't mention it on here, but I'll send the link, which you can share with the audience.
Yeah, interesting. Suzanne, have you come across stuff like that? And do you come across sort of particular tips for self-monitoring and maybe Gary mentioned like apps to thinking about timing medication and things like that. What's your take on it?
Yeah, there are lots of really good apps actually out there. So even just looking on thinking more from a physical sense of point of view, really looking at your walking or your balance, even if you look on your health app if you've got Android or Apple phone, that within that you can talk about your walking, you can talk about your pace, you can do 6-minute walk tests. There's lots of things out there you can monitor, but I agree, you don't want to do it so that you become you're over analytical all the time. I think the most important thing is thinking about things that bring you enjoyment and fulfillment, and thinking if they start to get a bit tricky, it's then maybe that you think, oh, maybe I'll sit back and reflect on that a bit more. What's changed or what's gone a bit different? And I think it's everyone who comes through to see me, I always do a set of baseline measures when I first meet them, so I know their starting point. So I think it's quite useful to have a starting point, because if things change, you don't know if you've got better or worse. You don't know where your starting point was. It's a hypothetical. So I think there's some value definitely to monitoring things, but not to be over kind of looking at them so much in depth that you become obsessed. I think it's really looking at what's going on and then thinking, oh, my walking's changed, or this isn't quite right. That's when they might come in and see me, and I'll be like, well, let's look and see what you did last time, and we can have a conversation. So I think it's good to have a professional who's interested, but also shares that information with you, that you can then figure out what's going on yourself. But yeah, use of apps are really helpful, definitely.
Yeah. And Emma, that sort of brings me to you, because I know that you have developed an app. Yes, so it seems like magic to me, called the Smile app. And we're not particularly, especially sort of promoting that app, although it is included in our list on Parkinson's UK if anybody wants to have a look at it. But just for example, because I know on your app you have a kind of a daily check-in thing, and I'm just thinking about the way that people can maybe monitor sort of mental health as well as the physical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we look at it, as you say, from a mental health perspective. And I think, as people have said, being able to track things, see what's made things better, see where you're at, can be really helpful. So what we encourage people to do on our app, and again, you don't have to do it in the app, you can do it on a piece of paper, do it in a notebook, it's perfectly, it works too, is to kind of, again, just track daily, how are you feeling? That can be a number, it can be a smiley face, it can be however you want to. One thing that we encourage people to do, and Gary and Andrew have been touching on it here with this positivity thing, is to look for things that have made people smile. I think sometimes to think, oh, we've got to be upbeat and positive all the time, that's really hard, and we're just not there all the time, and then we can end up beating ourselves up and thinking, oh gosh, and then we get stuck in a cycle. So looking for those little glimmers, or just those things that made you smile every day. It might have been a really rubbish day, but you had a hot cup of tea outside, or you gave the cat a nice cuddle. What are just those little things that brought a little bit of positivity or glimmers to your day? And then alongside that, what we encourage people to do is, number one, look at, okay, how can I bring more of this into my life? Whatever else is going on, what are those things that actually I can bring in? I can go and sit in the sunshine, or I can do a little bit more of that. And also to think, how does that connect with what's important to you? Because what your values are, what lights you up, what's important in your life is not necessarily going to be the same as the next person. But how does that connect? If seeing family is one of those things that lights you up, how can we bring more of that into our life? If it's being in nature, if it's having purpose, what are those things, and how do all those connect? So again, just like the physical symptoms, just kind of tracking things and looking at what works for me, what is bringing those little glimmers, those bits of positivity into my day, can really help.
And do you think that having an app can sometimes, I know apps won't be for everybody, but sometimes they can actually make things a little bit more accessible. It's something you can do alone, isn't it? You don't have to kind of be self-conscious about sharing those feelings if you're not quite there yet.
I think that's one thing. I think often, especially initially, people can be really just worried or self-conscious about admitting that they're struggling, about saying, what, I'm feeling down or depressed or anxious or whatever it is. And maybe people haven't ever been in a situation where they've discussed those feelings with somebody else. And sometimes go into a support group that can just seem a bit too much to start with. And so I do think sometimes having that app, or being able to do it in a way that you can do it at home, in your bed, wherever you need to, without having to tell anybody, without having to, give anything over in that way, I think can be helpful. And we also find it's something you can tap into at any point. So, if you're waking up in the night and your mind is racing, your partner's asleep and everything's going on our app or other apps, there's lots of things that you can tap into to help with sleep or to help with, anxious thoughts. And it just gives you, or you're sitting in a hospital waiting room and things flare up, you can put your headphones in and listen to something. So I think absolutely the connection, the support groups, the community is fabulous, really, really important. But I think, just being able to do something in your own space can be helpful sometimes too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it's not replacing anything else, or those other
No.
support networks or professional help like you mentioned,
Not at all,
Andy,
no.
about, but complementing those, and it can perhaps be there for the in-between times when you're struggling.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come on to quite a specific question that somebody sent in about having shoulder pain and rigidity in the right hand and fingers, and what might be done or considered to ease the discomfort. And I was going to come to you, Suzanne, for a little bit of an opinion on that.
Sure. Thank you. So it's really common to get shoulder pain, and actually for some people it's actually there. They might get seen by physiotherapists and present with shoulder pain, and it's often my colleagues will then say, "Can you have a look at this person walking? Do you think they might have Parkinson's?" So it's often they're quite eagle-eyed. So I think actually physios are great at being able to help kind of figure out, is this a frozen shoulder? Is it a rotator cuff problem? Is it actually something which can be helped by physio, or is it part of your Parkinson symptoms? Because obviously you've got a lot of joint stiffness, muscle stiffness, so there could be a number of factors which could cause shoulder pain. So I think it's important to go and see someone who knows something about shoulders and Parkinson's and can really help you decipher what's going on, because it might be that a course of physiotherapy might be helpful. It might be some specific exercises could be helpful. It might even be that your medication needs adjusting. If you've got quite a lot of stiffness in the whole arm and the hand, it might again be that actually your meds need changing. So it's really seeking someone out who can help you decipher all of those things, really. And there's lots of things out that can be helped. I mean, often in clinic, when I first see people recently diagnosed, it often is they might have an arm, and even if it's their dominant arm, they might not just be using as much as the other arm because of the stiffness, and it's almost a bit like a non-use. They favor then the other side. And so it is really good. I think physio has been recommended that we do see you as soon as you're diagnosed. So I think that someone like with a good pair of neurological eyes to kind of look and help you decipher what's going on with your movement is really helpful.
Yeah. So, accessing different clinical specialists that you might need. And is that something that you've identified with Andy?
Yeah, 100%. I think if you've got a shoulder pain, I mean, my own diagnosis came about because when I saw the GP, he believed I'd got a trapped nerve in my shoulder. So, obviously when I then saw the neurologist, it was something altogether more sinister. But I think quite often, if someone's presenting with shoulder pain, if they can see a physiotherapist, that specialist is likely to be able to advise them that this is muscular or something that they can help with, or actually this is something you should be seeing a neurologist about because it's not muscular at all. And left untreated, it's only going to get worse. So, trusting physiotherapists, everyone out there.
Yeah.
Very valuable resources.
And did it take quite a while for you to be diagnosed then, Andy?
It didn't once I sought a diagnosis. I was very fortunate to have private healthcare, and I was diagnosed probably within 5 minutes of walking into the neurologist's office, to be honest. But I know people who've waited multiple years for a diagnosis when they've actually been actively seeking that diagnosis because they know something's wrong. I mean, I presented with symptoms 25 years ago. I was officially diagnosed in 2014, but I only went to see the GP about the related symptom in 2014. So, everyone's story is different. And unfortunately, I know the health service isn't exactly flooded with neurologists, especially Parkinson specialist neurologists, and getting a diagnosis is a bit of a postcode lottery.
Yeah, we do know that, and there is, depending on where you are in the UK, there might be quite long waiting lists and things like that. I would just give our helpline a plug at this point, just if you're really struggling to get access, it is worth contacting somebody in our helpline to see if there's any support we can give you. But Gary, did it take you a long time to get diagnosed? What was your situation?
It didn't take certainly nothing like the problems that Andy had, but I found I had a problem. I couldn't stop my finger kind of tapping, and it wasn't a big problem, but it was kind of weird, you know. And I spoke to the doctor, my local GP. To be honest, she knew nothing about Parkinson's. That was clear with hindsight. She said she thought it was restless leg syndrome, and she told me to have lots of cold baths. I've got no idea why. 10 years later, I haven't worked out anything about that. And she said, come back in a month. I came back in a month. But she did have the smart decision to get me to see a neurologist, who was straight on to it, and that was great. But it it wasn't. I mean, GPs, some of them are brilliant, some of them don't really understand Parkinson's, and I think you've got to, be confident enough to say you want to sort this out and find out what's the problem, I'm afraid. Can I just also pick up on something that Andy said earlier, which I think is really important? And he said, that his scores have improved in certain areas. And one thing that I think really bugs me is everyone gets this impression that the only way things can go is down. And it's just not the case. I mean, a lot of elements of my condition have deteriorated, but equally, I can work on my balance. I can work on my gait generally. My running's got quicker, which shouldn't happen with age anyway. So, I think you can do a lot of things. And I think this kind of denial of the ability of people with Parkinson's to improve and live life the way they want to is a really sad and wrong thing, to be honest.
Suzanne, do you want to come in?
I completely agree with Gary, actually, because it's something I've noticed working with people with Parkinson's is that they'll come into clinic and say, I was told by my consultant, this is the best I'm ever going to be, and tomorrow I'm just going to keep getting worse, and it's just going to be, and I'm like, just stop. No, there are things that you can do to help yourself. I think positive mindset and setting small goals and short-term goals can be really useful. But also, I mean, within my practice, I've seen people improve their walking speed, improve their balance, improve their mental health and their physical health, and all with some of the things we do. And I do use outcome measures to help them, because I'll say, look, remember we did this 6 months ago and look how far you've come. And I think that's really useful in clinic to be doing that. So that people can see their progress, and it kind of, so it's not all doom and gloom. It's certainly it's hard work. It's really hard work, and it takes dedication. And some days are going to be better than others, but actually you can improve, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and thinking about your football, Andy, I mean, is that something that you 10 years ago somebody had said, you're going to be going traveling abroad and playing walking football and representing Parkinson's? Is that something you would have believed?
Probably not. Obviously as a young boy, I had dreams of playing football for England. I didn't really expect them to come true when I was 59 years old and riddled with Parkinson's, but such is life. Opportunities are there, absolutely. Opportunities that, are life-changing. I mean, it's an incredible honour to represent your country at any level. So to be given the opportunity to play football in an England shirt is absolutely something I'll treasure for the rest of my life.
Gary, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a really important point around work in this as well. I mean, I was really fortunate. My boss at the time has he's got a lot of knowledge of Parkinson's actually, and he treated me so well compared to stories I've heard. And I actually got promoted about a year after I'd been diagnosed. And he recognized, that I wasn't suddenly unable to do the job. In fact, there are aspects of my condition that would help me understand more in a way. And I think that, again, it's so easy to be pigeonholed, and I think there are some really challenging aspects for some people around this in terms of work. But I think there are also some reasons you can be very positive about the role that you can play, and don't just assume that you have to retire straight away, which was my first reaction, was that I probably was going to have to retire and give up work altogether.
Yeah, is that something that you've, or Andy first, and then I was going to see if Emma had any take on that as well. Yeah, go for it, Andy.
I've got to say, unfortunately, there are an awful lot of horror stories of people as employers, immediately targeting the people that have been diagnosed and trying to get them out of the organisation. So what I would say to people there is keep very detailed records of conversations you have, promises that might be made, things that might be said that make you feel uncomfortable. Anything and everything, keep very detailed notes, because they may become very useful to you in a future encounter.
Yeah, and take advice.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. Emma.
Yeah, really interesting to listen to everybody's experiences there. And I think the one thing I want to pick up on there is just how our mindset, how our thinking, how our brain is connected with our body, because I think it's really easy to get stuck in negative thinking patterns, to be told or to hear, oh, it's only ever going to get worse, nothing's going to get better. And we know the way we think impacts our body as well. It frustrates me greatly how everything is kept so apart in the medical system, the physical health, the mental health, because it also interacts with each other. We know pain in particular, so back when we started on the question with pain, I think there's so much research into that. It's really, really interesting. And pain it's so debilitating. It can just take over your life. It can impact everything that's going on, and it's very much a physiological experience. But we also know from the research that actually past experiences of pain, how you perceive that this is going to impact your life, levels of anxiety, levels of previous stress that we've held in the body, all of that impacts our experience of pain. It's not necessarily affecting the pain itself, but the way we experience it. So I think all of these things interact with each other, and that's why it's so important to hear everybody's experiences, and also to take it in this big holistic approach rather than pigeonholing all the different things. Everything kind of comes together and affects people, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I know somebody had sent in a question about, sorry, were you coming in there, Gary?
Yeah,
No.
I just wanted to add something. I mean, I think just putting those two things together, I mean, being positive mindset does not mean being naive.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because Andy's absolutely right. You need to understand and know your position and make sure you've protected yourself in that regard. But you can do both. You can have a positive mindset about your capability and what you're able to do, and you can make sure that you protect your rights as well. I thought that was important to make that point, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to come back to that, Andy? Or
there's not much I can say in public, but
yeah,
anyone
that's
does have
okay.
problems with their employer, obviously take legal advice. But
Yeah.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
talk to people
And
privately.
that is something else that the Parkinson's UK helpline can talk to you about as well. We can refer you through to one of our specialist employment advisors. So don't hesitate if you're struggling there at all. I was wanting to just touch on insomnia, because somebody had asked about that, and Emma, you prompted me a little bit by talking about having that app available through the night. Is that something that you come across as a symptom often, Suzanne?
Yes. I always ask about sleep and sleep quality because it's really important. So for people with Parkinson's, there are so many things that can interrupt your sleep. I mean, one is it might be that you have quite vivid dreams. You might act out your dreams. You might be unaware, but you keep the person sleeping next to you awake all night because you're playing football for Chelsea or something. So those things can be treated quite easily with a melatonin medication. But then there's also things you might need to get up to the toilet frequently in the night, which can disturb sleep. Anxiety is a lovely thing that creeps in and just wakes people up and sends your thoughts racing. And then obviously then the next day you're very tired, you're struggling with kind of concentration. So I think sleep quality is so important to kind of really figure out what keeps you up at night, where the issues are, and then either seek help and really try and figure out how you can improve your sleep quality. So yes, yeah, I do talk about sleep a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, has affected you? Have you got any tips about sleeping well?
Yeah, tips and absolutely it affected me a lot in my early days. I think my mind was racing, you know, quite a lot about what the future might hold when I was first diagnosed. I probably, like the majority of people diagnosed with Parkinson's, knew very little about it when I was diagnosed. And finding sources of accurate information, you know, there's so much information out there, and it's only now I can look back and a load of it's absolute tosh, to be honest. But I think mental calmness is probably the biggest key for me personally to get a good night's sleep, and that's something I'm very
Might have lost Andy there. Yep. So probably the joys of internet and technology. What about you, Gary? Is that something that you've experienced?
Sleep is my second big issue. I mean, my first issue is my movement and tremor, and the second one is sleep, and they actually go hand in glove together as well. I think this brings a number of things together. So I use my app on the watch to monitor my sleep, and I can sort of track when I've had good sleep and what does that relate to in terms of other things that I've done that day. So I think if I find myself, one thing I'd say is try and get yourself tired before you go to sleep. Has been my experience because I tend to sleep longer. I have had vivid dreams, not as many recently, and that can be quite upsetting, and you sort of remember bits of them, etc. But I do think there are plenty of bits of advice about improving your sleep, whether it's not using your computer just before you go to bed, etc. The one that's most difficult, Suzanne mentioned already, is I find that I go to sleep at 10. At 1:32, I will almost always need to go to the loo, and once you've got up, it's very difficult to get back to sleep again. And I've had to persevere with stopping myself from turning the computer on and sort of submitting to the fact that you're never going to get to sleep, because you will, but you certainly won't if you start writing emails or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think that must be an easy trap to fall into. Any thoughts from you on that, Emma?
Yeah, I think, as everyone said, sleep is it's such an important one, isn't it? We all know how much worse and how much more difficult everything is when we haven't got a good night's sleep, and how much it features in so many different mental health diagnoses is poor sleep. So I think one thing to focus on is that time when you do wake up in the night. I think it's very easy. We wake up, we can't sleep, and then we add stress and anxiety on top of that, because we start saying, oh, but now I'm only going to get this amount of hours sleep, and oh, then I've got to be here in the morning, and so we add on top of it. So it sounds silly, but quite a simple thing to start with, just to give a shot, is to give yourself permission when you do wake up in the night. Say, okay, I'm awake. That's okay. Sounds so simple, but just giving ourselves that permission. And also, again, sounds counterintuitive, but getting up. So if you can't get back to sleep in about 20 minutes, our instinct is to stay there and to keep trying. But actually, it's better to get yourself up, not to turn on the computer and start sending emails, but, you know, to do something relaxing, whether that's reading, whether that's mindfulness, whether that's listening to a sleep track of some sort. Some people also find free writing really helpful. I find this quite helpful. So often we've just got all these thoughts and anxieties and worries whirring around in our heads. So to literally just sit down, not with any structure, anything like that, just write what's in your head, write what comes out. And sometimes just freeing those thoughts and letting them out can help us relax a little bit. And one more of a kind of physiological thing is there's quite good research showing if we get daylight, if we get sunlight within about an hour of waking up, it helps kind of reset our circadian rhythms. So again, on a cold February day, you don't necessarily feel like getting out and, you know, stepping outside, but there's just, yeah, there are some little things to help. But, you know, if your sleep is affected, I always say start there, you know, because it's very difficult to tackle everything else, you know, when you're struggling with the sleep.
Yeah, that's great. Andy, I'm so sorry you got cut off. We've been talking about sleep and possibly little bits of medication, but a bit of mindfulness and being aware of those mental health aspects. Was there anything that you were dying to say that you didn't get the opportunity to say because you got chucked out?
My PC completely crashed. I've had to find an old computer quickly to get on. But yeah, I mean, for me, getting a calm mind is vital to getting a good night's sleep. And that can be difficult if you've got a stressful job or relationship issues and all sorts of things that Parkinson's is likely to deliver into your life, unfortunately, are going to potentially compromise your sleep. So do whatever you can. I think I talked about this. Oh, for goodness sake. I talked about this stress management toolkit early on in the talk, and you really need to constantly refer to that because you'll need different elements of it at different times to tackle different or potentially different issues that come to light. And that can be your support group, it can be your mindfulness, it can be your meditation, it can be your cold water therapy. Whatever works for you is absolutely fine, but if it works for you, keep hold of it and keep doing it.
Yeah, great advice. So we're starting to come to the end of the session now. I can't believe that hour has flown over, and I just want to try and pull a few threads together, really, that we've touched on. So we've definitely talked about support networks being really important. We've talked about that sort of peer support, talk to somebody who's a bit like me and in a similar situation, and we've talked about that being really important for supporters, partners, carers as well, independently. A big one about guilt, like Emma keeps saying, give yourself permission, stop, like Gary said, stop beating yourself up, not, you know, let that go to move forward. We've talked about seeing specialists to try and get advice, possible medication or physical activity, exercises that are going to help with some of the symptoms. And I just, before we close, we've talked about Andy playing football and representing England. And Gary, I know you've done some real big physical activity challenges. Are you training for anything at the moment, just to give us a bit of inspiration before we go?
Gosh, I'm training for a few things. I'm going to be, we're going to be cycling around Ireland. We're cycling up Mont Ventoux, and we're doing a cycle. There's a Parkinson's group doing a cycle from the top of Portugal to the bottom. I've got 10 marathons this year. September is sporting challenge month, so we're going to do a different sport every day, and some of those will be, much harder than others, and some of them will be, hopefully a lot easier, but there'll be things I haven't ever done before. And then I've got a final one for October, but I won't say what that is. Yet I'm leaving that as a surprise, because Janet isn't convinced that I'm being sensible in doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, well, that certainly piqued my interest.
But what
so
I would say,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
just to add to that,
No, go on.
this is where the support that I've had has been brilliant. I mean, people have been superb in helping me do events and sport of all sorts over the last few years, and I would really strongly reinforce, you don't have to do marathons, you just do things that you enjoy. And try stuff and enjoy it, and make sure you do it on your terms.
Yeah, brilliant message. And I know some people with Parkinson's who swear, for example, by table tennis, and absolutely love table tennis. Andy.
Can I just point out, trying everything, there's an organisation called Sport Parkinson's, and they have a triathlon where it's the opportunity to try all of these sports, from Nordic walking to table tennis to golf to cricket, you name it. There will be anyone who's got a Parkinson's exercise class or Parkinson's exercise sport, they will be there giving you the opportunity to try that on the day. And I believe it's the 22nd of July or June.
It could be June, 22nd of June, I think.
But I can send you the link and you can definitely pass that on to everyone. I think it's at Twickenham this year.
Yeah, fabulous. So I think the really overwhelming message there is a diagnosis of Parkinson's does not mean that you have to give up things that you love. And if you listen to our panelists, Andy and Gary, they've tried new things and excelled at them. So I hope that's encouraging and reassuring. So I think it's just left for me at this point to say a huge thank you to all of our panel members for joining us. A huge thank you to everybody who's come along to listen. I hope you've got something out of it. We will send out the recording and we'll try and pick up a couple of questions that we haven't addressed as well. So thank you, and goodbye for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.